A single dad stopped to help a stranger, and what happened next turned into something neither of them ever expected. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, do you believe kindness can still change the world? And hit subscribe so you won't miss the next story that might just inspire you. The July sun pressed down on the highway with the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. Lauren Bennett's BMW sat stranded on the shoulder, hood propped open in surrender, a thin ribbon of steam curling into the sky. Her cream-colored suit looked like it belonged in a glass tower downtown, not on cracked asphalt where tires hummed and trucks roared past. She paced beside the car, phone in hand, her heels clicking with the impatience of someone who wasn't used to waiting. Ethan Walker slowed his rusted pickup as soon as he saw her. Instinct told him to stop, the same instinct his father had taught him years ago. When you see someone stuck, you help if you can. He eased onto the shoulder, hazard lights flashing, the engine grumbling like an old dog settling into the shade. In the rearview mirror, 7-year-old Noah pressed his face against the glass, wide-eyed and eager. His small hands left foggy prints on the window as he whispered, "Daddy, is her car sick?" Ethan gave a half smile. "Looks that way, buddy. Stay put for a minute. I'll check on her." He climbed down from the truck, boots crunching against gravel, the metal toolbox warm in his hand from baking in the sun. 23 years of fixing things had taught him that almost everything broken could be put back together. Cars, washing machines, leaky pipes, people. Though that was trickier. He glanced at Lauren as she ended her call with a sharp tap of her finger, shoulders tight with the weight of a schedule unraveling. Up close, her authority was clear in the way she held herself, but so was her exhaustion. The fine lines at the corner of her eyes, the fragile edge beneath her polished voice. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, crisp, efficient. "I've already called for roadside assistance." Ethan wiped his hands on his jeans, leaving behind smudges that told the story of long days under hoods and behind tools. "With respect, ma'am, you might be waiting a while out here. Sundays are busy, especially in this heat. Mind if I take a look? Won't cost you a dime." She hesitated, eyes flicking toward his truck, toward Noah, waving enthusiastically from the back seat, then back to his grease-stained shirt that bore the faded logo of a shop that had closed 2 years earlier. Trust battled with necessity in her expression, but the hiss of steam from her engine made the choice for her. "If you think you can help, I suppose." Her name came as she stepped between, heels tapping softly now like a heartbeat losing its pace. "I'm Lauren Bennett." Ethan nodded. "Ethan Walker, and that's my boy Noah. We were just heading back from the grocery store when we saw you here." He leaned over the engine, the smell of hot metal rising into the thick July air. And for a moment, the world around them shrank. Just a broken car, a woman out of place, and a man with calloused hands who still believed that helping a stranger mattered. Lauren folded her arms, the phone still in her hand as if clinging to the one lifeline she trusted. "I've already called for help," she repeated, her tone clipped, as though saying it with enough authority might make the tow truck appear faster. Ethan didn't argue. He only crouched beside the car, toolbox at his side, moving with the quiet patience of a man used to long days and stubborn machines. From the cab of the pickup, Noah pressed his nose harder against the glass, his little hand waving, eyes shining with the kind of open trust that could melt even the most guarded heart. Lauren's gaze followed his, the boy's grin, the way he tapped the window with excitement. It softened something in her expression. Ethan caught that hesitation, the moment when her world of order collided with the messy kindness of strangers. He nodded once, respectful but steady. "Just let me take a quick look, ma'am, nothing more." The steam still whispered from under the hood, carrying with it the faint, sweet smell of antifreeze. It told a story Ethan knew well before his hands even touched the metal. With a sigh, Lauren stepped back, the sharp clack of her heels now subdued, as though conceding ground she hadn't planned to give. "If you insist," she said, though her voice held less command, more weariness. Ethan leaned over the engine, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the July heat pressing down like a heavy hand. The radiator hissed softly, its rubber hose split clean through, a jagged wound leaking green fluid onto the asphalt. He ran his fingers along the damaged line, feeling the brittle edges that came only with neglect and time. This didn't happen overnight. he murmured. The kind of wear that builds quietly until one day it gives out. Behind him, Lauren shifted, arms still crossed, but her eyes fixed on his movements, the way his hands seemed to know the language of broken things. "When's the last time you had this serviced?" he asked, glancing up briefly. She exhaled, the answer carrying a hint of embarrassment. "I wouldn't know. My assistant usually handles details like that. I drive. Someone else maintains. That's how it's always been." Ethan gave a small nod, not in judgment, but in understanding. There was more in her admission than she probably intended. A life built on delegation, on distance from the ordinary troubles that other people carried. "Good news," he said, straightening, wiping his hands across a rag tucked in his pocket. "It's fixable. Bad news. Without a new hose, you are not driving this car anywhere today. Even if I tried patching it, you'd be right back on the side of the road in 10 minutes. Lauren's lips pressed into a line, the kind that came from years of hearing solutions she didn't like. Her phone buzzed again, screen lighting up with another name, another demand on her time. She looked at the leaking green puddle beneath the car, then back at the man whose pickup was more rust than paint, and at the boy who now held up a drawing to the window for her to see. Scribbled crayon lines of a rocket ship with crooked fins and flames bursting from the tail. Her shoulders eased just slightly, as though the weight of appearances slipped for a breath. Maybe, she thought, this stranger with grease-stained hands and a child who believed in rocket ships might be her only way forward. "All right," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "Do what you can." Ethan nodded, not triumphant, simply steady. He had seen this before, the moment when necessity bends pride into trust. With the sun dipping lower, the air heavy with heat, and the sound of Noah tapping on the glass behind him, Ethan closed the hood with a gentle click. The truth was simple. This car wasn't going anywhere tonight, and sometimes neither was the person who owned it, unless they allowed someone else to help. Ethan closed the hood with a soft thud. The car stood silent now, its broken hose bleeding green onto the pavement, helpless against the heat. He wiped his hands on the rag, eyes narrowing slightly against the sun, then looked at Lauren, who stood there like a woman caught between worlds. Heels on broken asphalt, phone buzzing with unanswered demands, her life carefully constructed, yet unraveling by the side of a highway. He cleared his throat gently, not wanting to startle her. "Ma'am, here's the truth. You are not getting anywhere in that BMW today. The parts store is closed soon, and even if I had the hose on me, this kind of repair takes time." He glanced at his watch, then toward the pickup, where Noah was now busy sketching more rockets on the fogged-up glass. Lauren pressed the phone tighter in her hand, her jaw tense. "I have a meeting in the morning. It's important." She sounded less like a woman giving orders and more like someone pleading with circumstance. Ethan nodded, understanding, but steady. "Then let me take you where you need to go. My boy and I can drop you at the Heartfelt Hotel, and I'll come back for your car tomorrow. I'll get it running right." She blinked, the offer hanging in the thick summer air like something foreign. "You do that?" she asked softly. "For a complete stranger?" The surprise in her voice made Ethan pause, not because her question was unreasonable, but because it struck him how rare such simple trust must have become in her world. He shifted his weight, the gravel crunching under his boots. "My daddy used to say, when someone's stuck, you help them out. Doesn't matter if you know them or not. Stuck is stuck." Lauren studied him, her eyes tracing the worn logo on his shirt, the grease smudges on his hands, the old pickup idling with its hazard lights winking like quiet promises. She looked at Noah, who pressed his palms to the glass and gave her a grin so wide it crinkled his cheeks. Something in her expression softened. The mask of the executive cracked just enough to let something warmer show through. She glanced at the BMW, then back at Ethan. There was a long silence before she finally exhaled, her voice quieter now. "I suppose, if you're sure it isn't too much trouble." "Not out of the way," Ethan said simply with a small shrug. "Just the right thing to do." Lauren hesitated again, almost as if waiting for the catch, the condition, the price that usually came with help. But Ethan was already gathering his tools. No contracts, no promises, just the quiet conviction of someone who believed decency wasn't something you charged for. She found herself unsettled by that, unsettled and strangely moved. As Ethan opened the truck door for her, Noah scooted over eagerly, his small voice carrying out into the evening air. Hi, I'm Noah. Do you like rocket ships? Lauren blinked, then let out the faintest laugh. It was the first sound of relief she'd made all day. She looked back at Ethan, who only gave her a steady nod, as if to say, "You're safe here." And in that moment, between the broken BMW left behind on the highway, the boy's innocent welcome and the stranger's uncalculated kindness, Lauren realized this wasn't just about getting to a hotel. It was about being reminded that sometimes, in the unlikeliest places, people still stop for each other. Not for gain, not for glory, but simply because it was the right thing to do. The pickup rumbled back onto the highway, its old engine humming steady beneath the hood. Lauren sat in the passenger seat, her posture still composed, though not as rigid as before. The leather briefcase rested in her lap like a shield she wasn't quite ready to lower. Beside her, Ethan kept his eyes on the road, hands firm on the wheel, the sun painting his profile in gold. From the back seat came Noah's voice, bubbling with the excitement only a child could carry. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eager to share. "Did you know?" he said. "I'm building a rocket ship. It's not real, but it's got switches and lights and even wings." His small hands waved in the air, as though sketching the design right there in front of them. Lauren turned her head, surprised at the sudden shift in tone. A boy speaking of rockets while she sat stranded between obligations. Yet she found herself leaning back toward him, her voice softer than she'd used all day. "A rocket ship? Tell me more." Noah's eyes lit up and the words spilled like music. "Dad's helping me with the wiring. We're using lights from his electrical stuff, so when I flip the switch, it'll glow like we're really blasting off. He said he'd help me make the control panel too." Her gaze flicked to Ethan. He said nothing, only kept driving, but there was a quiet pride in the corner of his mouth. Lauren smiled, truly smiled, for the first time since her car gave out. She asked Noah questions that didn't feel forced: where the rocket would go, what planets he'd explore, what kind of crew he'd bring along. Noah answered with the seriousness of an engineer, though his words tumbled over each other with excitement. First the moon, then Mars, then maybe a new planet where people who lost their homes could live safe. The words hung in the air, simple yet heavy. Lauren's eyes lingered on him longer than she expected, then shifted to Ethan. His knuckles were white on the wheel, though his expression stayed even. She didn't ask, not yet, but she felt something there, a weight this father carried alone. "Your dad sounds pretty amazing," she said gently. Noah grinned. "He can fix anything. Our washing machine broke and he laid all the pieces on the kitchen floor. When he put it back together, it worked better than before. And when Mrs. Patterson's porch light went out, he climbed up and fixed it, even though she didn't have money to pay him." Lauren glanced at Ethan, caught his reflection in the side window. There it was again. That quiet dignity, the kind that didn't need applause. She felt her throat tighten, not with pity, but with respect. She realized she couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken of her with that kind of unshakable faith. Outside, the skyline of Portland came into view, the Heartfelt Hotel rising like a monument of glass and stone. But inside the truck, the world had shrunk to something smaller, something more human. A boy dreaming of rocket ships, a father steady at the wheel, and a woman who suddenly felt more seen in their company than she had in months of boardrooms and deals. Noah leaned back, satisfied with his storytelling, and for the first time that day, Lauren let herself laugh, a sound unguarded, genuine, the kind of laugh that reminded her what it felt like to breathe without armor. Ethan heard it, and though he didn't turn, a small smile touched his face. Perhaps he thought this ride was doing more than just carrying her to a hotel. It was carrying her back to herself. The house was quiet when Ethan and Noah returned, the kind of quiet that settles in after a long day and lingers like a shadow. Noah bounded upstairs with his backpack, already chattering about the new adjustments he wanted to make to his rocket ship. Ethan managed to smile, kissed the boy on the head, and told him not to stay up too late. Once Noah disappeared into his room, the weight Ethan had carried all day came crashing back down. He dropped his keys onto the kitchen counter, the sound echoing in the small space, then pulled out the stack of envelopes he had shoved into his pocket earlier that morning. The bill sat heavy in his hands, paper thin but sharp enough to cut. He spread them across the table, one after another, until the surface was covered in numbers stamped in black ink, demands he couldn't meet. At the very top, the envelope marked in red, "Final notice. His mortgage, 30 days," it read, "to bring the account current or face foreclosure." Ethan pressed his palms against the table, his eyes fixed on the letters until they blurred. His throat tightened as memories slipped into the silence. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was where Lisa had taught him to flip pancakes on Sunday mornings, laughing when he dropped the first one onto the floor. It was where they had danced barefoot in the living room while Noah slept in his crib, the glow of an old jazz record filling the space with warmth. It was where he had sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand until the strength slipped from her fingers, whispering promises that he wasn't sure he could keep. Every room in this house carried her. The kitchen smelled of the coffee she used to make, even though the pot had been dry for years. The front porch still held the marks of her handwriting in the chalk Noah scribbled after she was gone. To lose this place would be to lose the last piece of her, and Ethan couldn't bear the thought of tearing that from his son's life. He rubbed his face with tired hands, the skin rough from years of work, and reached for the calculator. He punched in numbers one more time, as though maybe tonight the math would change, as though grief and hope could alter the cold reality of dollars and cents. But the answer was the same. Not enough, never enough. Upstairs, he heard Noah's small voice, faint but clear, humming to himself as he drew rocket ships across a page. The sound pierced Ethan's chest. His boy still dreamed, still believed that his father could fix anything. And Ethan wanted so desperately to live up to that faith, even as the world seemed determined to prove otherwise. He pushed the bills into a pile, slid the notice to the bottom as if burying it might make it less real, and leaned back in his chair. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, each second a reminder that time was running out. He thought of the way Lauren Bennett had smiled in the truck earlier, the rare light in her eyes when she listened to Noah's dreams. He had given her a ride, offered her kindness without cost. But when it came to his own life, his own home, he felt powerless. Ethan lowered his head into his hands, shoulders heavy, whispering to the empty kitchen. "We'll manage, Lisa. Somehow we'll manage. We'll." And even as despair pressed hard against him, he knew he had to stand tall for Noah because tomorrow his son would wake up still believing in rocket ships. And Ethan couldn't let that light go out. The kitchen light cast a pale glow over the table, illuminating the scattered bills like silent accusers. Ethan sat motionless, elbows braced on the wood, head in his hands. The final notice lay at the top of the pile again, no matter how many times he tried to bury it. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, the kind of stillness that only deepened the sound of his own tired breathing. The shrill ring of his phone startled him. Unknown number at this hour. It was usually a debt collector, or worse. Silence after the first hello. He thought about letting it ring out, but something nudged him. He pressed accept. "Mr. Walker, the voice on the other end began, soft but steady. "This is Lauren Bennett." Ethan straightened in his chair, caught between surprise and confusion. "Ms. Bennett," he said carefully, glancing at the clock. "Is everything all right, your car?" "It's fine," she answered quickly, almost apologetic. "I wanted to call because, well, this might sound strange, but I've been thinking about today, about what you did." Ethan frowned, his thumb running over the edge of a bill. "It wasn't anything special, ma'am, just giving someone a ride." "That's where you're wrong," she said. Her voice carried something different now, softer, less polished, like the sound of someone setting down armor they'd worn too long. "I've been in meetings all evening, rooms full of people who only smile because they want something, who help only when there's something in it for them. What you did, it was just kindness, and I'd forgotten how rare that is." He didn't know how to answer, so he stayed quiet, letting her words hang in the still air of his kitchen. "There's something else," she continued, her tone shifting to something heavier. "I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but I don't believe in coincidences anymore. When I got back to my room tonight, I went through some files. Ethan, Bennett Capital holds the mortgage on your house." The words landed like a punch. His hand tightened around the phone, the kitchen tilting slightly around him. "My what?" "We purchased a portfolio from Hometown Bank 6 months ago. Yours was one of the accounts. She paused as if weighing the weight of every syllable. In fact, I was reviewing your file just last week. 3 months behind, penalties stacked up. Tomorrow morning, I was scheduled to finalize foreclosure. Ethan gripped the table edge until his knuckles whitened. So today your car, the ride, that was all some kind of setup? No, Ethan. Her voice was urgent now, almost pleading. The breakdown was real. I had no idea who you were when you stopped. I didn't make the connection until later, when I recognized your name in the files. Silence stretched, taut and heavy, filled only by the tick of the wall clock. Ethan's chest rose and fell, the disbelief almost choking him. I need you to understand, she said finally, her voice trembling at the edges. I've spent years looking at people as numbers on spreadsheets, as risks and profits. But today, when you stopped for me, when I saw Noah's rocket ship drawings and heard him talk about you, I realized those numbers have faces, stories, lives. Ethan closed his eyes, the image of his boy bent over paper and crayons flashing in his mind. He thought of the house around him, every corner filled with Lisa's memory. So what happens now? He asked quietly. On the other end, Lauren exhaled, as though releasing something she'd held for far too long. That depends, Ethan. Because tonight, for the first time in years, I'm not just looking at numbers. I'm looking at the man behind them, and I'm asking myself what kind of person I want to be from this moment forward. Ethan sat in silence, the phone pressed tightly against his ear. The kitchen around him felt too small, too fragile to contain the weight of what Lauren had just confessed. His pulse thudded in his temples, each beat echoing the question that hung between them. What happens now? For a long moment, there was only the soft crackle of the line. Then Lauren's voice returned, steady but colored with something raw. After I hung up earlier this afternoon, she said, I couldn't stop thinking about Noah, about how certain he was that his dad could fix anything, about how you've kept going even after losing your wife. His words, your actions, they made me see everything differently. Ethan swallowed hard, glancing toward the staircase where the faint glow of Noah's nightlight spilled onto the landing. He wanted to believe her, but hope was a dangerous thing to hold when the bank had already stamped final notice in red across your life. Lauren's tone shifted, more resolved now. I've spent years making decisions from spreadsheets, risk assessments, profit margins. Today I realized I was forgetting the people behind those numbers. She paused, then continued slowly, as if measuring the impact of each word. I reviewed your file tonight. Your mortgage isn't being foreclosed. Not anymore. We're restructuring it. Lower payments, extended terms, forgiveness of the penalties and late fees. You'll keep your home, Ethan. You and Noah won't lose it. The breath Ethan released sounded almost like a sob, though he tried to mask it. His fingers tightened on the phone as though holding on to the lifeline itself. Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Don't call it charity, she interrupted gently. It isn't. It's a choice, an investment in you, in Noah, in the kind of world I want to believe still exists. Ethan closed his eyes. Lisa's memory brushed against him like a whisper, as if she were reminding him that grace sometimes comes when you least expect it. And there's more, Lauren continued, her voice low but urgent. Do you remember I told you I was headed to a meeting when my car broke down? That meeting was about a housing development in Portland. 43 families, all about to lose their homes before Christmas. I was supposed to sign the foreclosure papers tonight. Legally sound, financially profitable. But after hearing Noah talk about his rocket ship taking people to new homes, after hearing him dream of a safe place for those who had lost everything, I couldn't do it. Ethan's brow furrowed, unsure he'd heard her right. You mean, I canceled the meeting. Instead, Bennett Capital will partner with a nonprofit to help those families refinance and repair their homes. It will cost us in the short term, but I believe it will save us in ways quarterly reports could never measure. For the first time that night, Ethan let himself breathe, really breathe. The crushing weight that had pinned him for months began to lift, not entirely gone, but lighter. Lauren's voice softened, breaking slightly. When you stopped to help me on the side of that road, you didn't just fix a car. Ethan, you reminded me what kind of person I want to be. You probably saved more than my day. You may have saved my soul. Ethan sat there in the dim kitchen, the bills still scattered across the table. But suddenly they looked different, less threatening, less final. Upstairs, Noah turned in his sleep, murmuring something about stars. Ethan pressed the phone closer, his own voice thick but steady. "Thank you, Lauren, for seeing us, for giving us a chance." And in that quiet moment between a weary father, a sleeping boy, and a woman rediscovering her humanity, something shifted. Not just in numbers or contracts, but in lives, in futures, in the fragile but undeniable power of choosing kindness over profit. 2 days later, the afternoon sun stretched long shadows across Ethan's driveway, warming the hood of Lauren's BMW as he worked beneath it. The replacement hose lay neatly in his hands, a simple $40 part that stood between the car and the road. For Ethan, the repair was straightforward. 30 minutes of labor, a few tools, and the steady rhythm of work he understood better than words. But the air carried something different this time, something that made the job feel less like a hoe and more like a turning point. Lauren had arrived without her polished suit, without the heels that had clicked like a clock counting down her patience. Instead, she wore jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled back loosely. She looked less like the woman who commanded boardrooms and more like someone rediscovering how to breathe. She hadn't hovered near the car, hadn't checked her phone. Instead, she sat on the grass with Noah. The two of them bent over a spread of crayon-marked papers that fluttered in the light breeze. Noah spoke with the gravity of a young engineer, pointing at lines and arrows on his drawings. "This button makes the lights flash. This lever launches us into space." Lauren listened intently, leaning closer, asking questions that made his eyes sparkle. And when he explained how his dad could fix anything, she laughed, a soft, genuine sound that floated over to Ethan as he tightened a clamp on the hose. It was the kind of laugh that reminded him of a time when his own house had been filled with that same warmth. From his place under the hood, Ethan stole glances toward them. Lauren's knees tucked beneath her hand brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear as she gave Noah her full attention. The boy pointed at the sky, describing the planets he planned to visit, and she looked upward too, as if willing herself to see the same stars he imagined. For a moment, Ethan saw not a powerful executive, but a woman who carried her own tiredness, her own longing, and who, at least for this afternoon, had set it all down to sit in the grass with a child's dreams. "Oh, it was that done," Ethan said finally beyond on, lowering the hood with a satisfying click. She started the engine and the BMW purred, smooth and whole again. Lauren turned it off quickly, not because she doubted his work, but because her attention was still on Noah, who was now carefully taping 2 sheets of paper together to make the rocket taller. "Thank you, Ethan," she said as she rose from the grass, brushing her palms against her jeans. "For the car, yes, but also for this." He tilted his head, unsure. "For what?" "For reminding me what matters. For letting me sit here and remember what it feels like to listen. Really listen." She glanced at Noah, then back at Ethan. "It's been a long time since I felt part of something as simple as this." Noah jumped to his feet, holding his newly extended drawing high. "Look, Dad, Lauren helping me make it bigger." Ethan smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Looks like a real mission now, buddy." Lauren's eyes softened, lingering on father and son as though memorizing the picture. The sound of the repaired engine still hummed faintly in the air, but the greater repair, between 3 people sitting on the grass sharing stories in space, felt far more permanent. And as the late afternoon light turned golden, Ethan realized that for the first time in years, the weight on his shoulders wasn't quite so heavy. Somehow, in fixing her car, he had stumbled into something far greater. A moment that felt like the beginning of a family, even if no one had spoken it aloud yet. The morning after the BMW was fixed, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a different kind of paperwork spread before him. For months, those pages had been threats, final notices, overdue balances, numbers that seemed determined to crush him. But now, the new payment plan lay neatly in front of him, the ink fresh, the terms possible, the penalties gone, the monthly dues reduced to something he could manage without losing sleep. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel like it was slipping away. It felt like it might truly remain theirs. Noah bounded down the stairs in his pajamas, hair sticking up like a halo of chaos. "Morning, Dad," he chirped, already reaching for the cereal box. Ethan smiled, watching him pour too much into the bowl, milk sloshing just over the edge. The boy was still dreaming about rocket ships, still drawing them across the backs of old envelopes. And for once, Ethan felt he could breathe, knowing those dreams had a roof to stay under. Later that day, his phone rang. Lauren's voice carried warmth instead of urgency this time. Ethan, I spoke with a few partners this morning. Some of them need reliable electrical work, small contracts to start, but steady. I told them about you, about the way you fix things. Not just machines, but people's trust, too. Ethan felt his chest tighten, caught between gratitude and disbelief. Ma'am, you didn't have to. I know, she interrupted softly, but I wanted to. Consider it an introduction, not a favor. You've done more than enough for me already. True to her word, the calls began. A restaurant owner needing rewiring in the kitchen, a landlord with tenants waiting for repairs, a small community center that needed lights fixed before a weekend event. None of them were big jobs, but each one carried something Ethan hadn't felt in years. Momentum. Work that led to more work, a rhythm slowly building again. In the evenings when he returned home, Noah would meet him at the door with crayon drawings and new stories about the rocket ship, and Ethan could finally listen without the shadow of foreclosure pressing at his back. The kitchen table, once a place where he sat with his head in his hands, now held both bills and blueprints, numbers that added up, and a child's sketches of galaxies waiting to be explored. One night, as he closed up his toolbox after another long day, he looked across the yard where Lauren stood by her car, speaking with Noah about which planet they should visit first. The sound of her laugh drifted over, light and unguarded, and Ethan realized the world didn't feel so lonely anymore. He had his house, he had his boy, and now he had work, steady work that promised tomorrow would be brighter than yesterday. The burden was lighter, yes, but more than that, it was shared. For the first time since Lisa's passing, Ethan didn't feel like he was carrying it all alone. And that fragile, unexpected thread of hope, that was something worth holding on to with both hands. The late afternoon sun spilled amber light across the yard, turning the grass into threads of gold. Noah sat cross-legged on the porch, his newest rocket ship sketch spread wide across the wooden boards. His little finger traced the path of planets he had drawn, stopping on a circle shaded carefully in blue. This one's for people who lost their homes, he explained, his voice filled with certainty. My rocket will take them somewhere safe. Ethan leaned against the railing, the quiet pride of a father settling deep in his chest. He glanced toward Lauren, who knelt beside Noah, her sweater brushing against the porch as she leaned in to study every detail of his plans. She didn't pretend to listen. She listened as if each word mattered. And when Noah's voice carried that simple truth about building a place for those who had nowhere else, Ethan saw her shoulders shift, as if the words landed in places she rarely let anyone touch. When Noah darted inside to grab more crayons, the air softened around them. Lauren rose slowly, brushing her palms against her jeans, then looked at Ethan. For a moment, neither spoke. They didn't need to. The silence wasn't distance anymore. It was presence, thick with something unspoken but undeniable. Her eyes met his, steady, vulnerable. Then she smiled. Not the polished smile she used in boardrooms, but something gentler, almost shy. She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his before resting there fully, her touch warm, certain. Maybe, she said quietly, I've been searching for a home too. Not just hotels, not offices filled with contracts and numbers. A real home. Ethan felt his breath catch, the hesitation that had lived in him for years faltering under the weight of her honesty. He turned his hand, closing his calloused fingers around hers. The pause between them wasn't hesitation anymore. It was an agreement, a promise beginning to take shape. His voice was low, steady. Then maybe we build it together. The words lingered in the fading light, simple yet powerful. Lauren's smile deepened, her eyes glistening in the glow of a day that suddenly felt like a beginning instead of an end. Noah burst back through the door, arms full of crayons, his excitement unbroken. Dad, Miss Lauren, look! I found the silver one for the rocket's wings. He dropped to the porch again, busy with colors and possibilities. Ethan and Lauren knelt beside him, their shoulders brushing, their hands still linked even as they leaned in to study the drawing. And as the boy sketched a path through stars, Ethan realized his own path had shifted too. The house would stay, The work was returning, and beside him stood a woman who had once been only a stranger on the roadside, now offering something he hadn't dared to hope for, a chance at love, at family, at a tomorrow that was no longer darkened by loss. Sometimes, he thought, broken cars lead to unexpected repairs, not just under the hood, but in hearts that had carried too much alone. And with Lauren's hand still in his, Ethan felt the truth of it settle in his bones. This was no longer about survival. The story of Ethan Walker, Noah, and Lauren Bennett delivers a deeply moving lesson about the transformative power of selfless kindness and the unexpected connections that redefine our lives. Ethan, a single father burdened by grief and looming foreclosure, stops to help a stranded stranger, not knowing she holds the key to his home's fate. His simple act of fixing Lauren's car, driven by a belief in doing what's right, sparks a chain of events that saves not only his house, but also restores hope for both their futures. Lauren, a billionaire accustomed to seeing people as numbers, is touched by Ethan's quiet dignity and Noah's innocent dreams, learning to prioritize humanity over profit. Noah's unwavering faith in his father's ability to fix anything reminds us that a child's trust can inspire profound change. This story teaches us that kindness, given without expectation, can mend broken hearts and build bridges across vastly different worlds. It challenges us to pause, help others, and recognize the shared humanity in every encounter. What act of kindness has changed your life? How did Ethan and Lauren's journey touch you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's celebrate the moments that remind us to stay connected. If this story warms your heart, hit that subscribe button for more tales of love, hope, and second chances that show us the beauty of living with compassion. Join our community, and let's keep inspiring each other to choose kindness every day.